Thanks, Ed, and thanks, Aslak. I just wanted to give one example of, I used to work with Virgin Atlantic, and we did exactly the stuff that you were just seeing in the train carriages. And my favorite kind of edge case was when we thought we'd done everything. We said to the client, what else do you need in terms of seating arrangements? And they said, well, what about convicts? And we said, what about convicts? And they said, well, they have to be handcuffed to their person who looks after them, so they can't go across the aisle. So they have to be in the same aisle. Anyway, hi, I'm Toby Dykes. I work for the guys at Zone. I've been there for a couple of years now. Before that, I worked with Digitas, who are literally down the road on Brick Lane. Before that, I worked in the heyday at lastminute.com, so I've seen what we refer to in agency life as client side. So how many people here work for agencies or a digital design agency? Not very many. Okay. The doors are locked now. What you're going to see in a minute is a graph that's not based on any data or anything, but this is my kind of experience of how traditional or waterfall projects work in terms of how satisfied the client is at any moment of time. And I'm not saying that, I think we all know there are better ways of running projects than a traditional or waterfall project. But and they can be successful, I think. There are scenarios where that can happen. But generally, things go a bit like this. And when you're right over here at the start, almost by definition, the client's really chuffed with us because we've won a pitch. So they already think we're better than other people. And that's really good. And then there'll be this phase at the top here. I don't know how to do the pointer. But there'll be this phase up here where we're into kind of analysis and we're listening to everything they say and defining requirements. And then we do our wireframes and we kind of tell them we're going to meet all these requirements. And then you get into the creative time, and maybe then what they see isn't quite exactly what they want, but they're generally happy. And then on a project like this, you probably throw it over the fence to the technologists and testers, or testers are right down here, and you realize it's not a viable thing. It can't necessarily work. And that's not great for the client. It's also not great for us as an agency, because what we tend to do is we try and maintain the good times for as long as possible. So we agree to almost anything. We say, yeah, we can do that. And we could raise change requests and ask for more money, but then the satisfaction goes down more. And then at the end, of course, it's barely viable because we haven't involved the techies here. They're on another project when this is happening right over here. So it takes much longer and the margin goes down and the client hates us and all that kind of stuff. So again, in the same way, Agile projects can go wrong. Sometimes they do, but generally, if they're well run, I think that we usually have a scenario like this where they're really cagey and a bit worried about it at the start, and gradually it gets better. And the idea is to get the curve to start going up as soon as possible. So demonstrate working software after 2 weeks, after 1 week, after a month, whatever it might be. And I think that alongside great Agile traits like transparency, collaboration, trust, I think one that's not mentioned so much, or maybe it is, I'm not sure, is humility. I think both Dan and Konstantin mentioned that we shouldn't claim that we know the answers. What they actually said is we should assume we're wrong. That's quite difficult to do, but I think it's a really good mindset, and maybe do kind of hypothesis-driven development and assume the hypothesis is incorrect and try and validate it as quickly as possible. The problem with this is we have to win the work in the first place, and we win the work over here. So we tend to be quite arrogant places in agencies because they're playing a premium. So they expect us to have all the answers and be right up here and sell in some solution, not to be over here saying, well, you know, we don't have all the answers. Let's work together to see how they go. I think hopefully most of you know about Dragon's Den, which is based on the pitch process. And you never see anyone on Dragon's Den going in and saying, I've got a nice idea, but I don't know what the solution might look like. But I've got a really good process to make sure that we don't execute a bad solution on a really good idea. And also, it'll make sure that the idea isn't bad in the first place, or if it is, we can all throw a tarpaulin over it and go home and you haven't spent too much money because I'm going to ask you to drip fund this and do it every month or two. Never happens. What does happen is they go, ta-da! I got the best idea ever. And although I've remortgaged my house twice and got no traction at all with customers, this is an opportunity to invest £1 million in 2% of my company. And that's the scenario we get into so often. And it's kind of worse than that because quite often we're even constrained in terms of what we can pitch. So I don't know why I'm not using this. So a really bad scenario is predefined requirements, all right? So they've spent 6 months talking to every single stakeholder they can find and saying, what do you want? And then the stakeholders go, I don't know, can I spend a day with you and like do a complete brain dump and you write it down? And then we're told that that's what we've got to pitch against. Another one, I wasn't doing it because it doesn't work. Another one is lift and shift. This is amazing how often this happens, that they come to us and say, we want you to, most of this, what I'm talking about is kind of website builds and stuff, but it applies to lots of stuff. They say, we want you to re-platform from whatever it is, a CMS to a different CMS, but we want it to be exactly the same as our current system, because whilst we hate it, we still want it, which is just bizarre. And the other one is design up front. We've done the creative design. Now can you just deliver against it? We got another agency to do that. But the more I work in this, the more I understand why people do this. And the kind of predefined requirements is because maybe the sponsors got all this money together and gone to, and either they're the CMO or they've gone to the CMO and they've said, right, I've got all this money, I've got this project signed off, what do you want? And don't forget the kind of humility thing. They shouldn't know what the solution is, but they feel like it's their job to tell somebody what it is. So they get business analysts in to meet all the stakeholders and so forth. So the way I mitigate against that is to say, well, we could possibly deliver this in whatever your time period is, but the best case scenario we will get into is in, let's say, a year's time. We've delivered what you wanted a year ago, not what you need right now. And by all means, let's have a look at that list of stuff and let's use that to feed into our collaborative process that we're going to use, but let's have lots of other things that feed into it as well. The lift and shift one, well, this is because this is usually, they're so risk averse, they just don't want things to get worse, right? And my response to that is usually, well, where's your ambition? It's the best thing, the best place we're going to be in a year's time that things have got no worse, they've got no better. And you're so risk averse, you're in danger of introducing the risk of delay because it takes so much longer to replicate something than to start something from scratch. And the final one, the design up front, it kind of makes sense. Like if you're going to build a house, you get the architects in first and then before you get the builders in. But I even had one client at my last agency, a high street bank, who said, it wasn't my project, but I remember hearing them say, I've got the two best agencies in the country together, one to do with design, one to do with tech. What could possibly go wrong? With no sense of irony at all. But what I say to that one is, okay, let's maybe use these designs as some kind of vision piece that feed into our emergent style guide or whatever it might be, but use it, don't actually use it as the target to aim for. So on top of that, this is meant to be a team of people who are about to start a project, an Agile project, and they're meant to look really apprehensive. I only noticed last night they all look really chuffed with themselves, but it's meant to be they're a little bit nervous, okay? And this would happen with any project. This would happen with an in-house team. They probably know each other a bit, but maybe some of them are new to Agile or and whatever framework we might be using. But once you put this kind of agency dynamic in, you put this like barrier almost between the two where these two guys probably know each other. But we will have only met them, maybe, we might not have met them at all, we might have met them in the pitch once or twice. And it leads to a kind of lack of trust and so forth, because don't forget, they're paying a lot of money for us. So the way we bridge that divide is in the worst way possible, which is with a contract. And contracts kind of go against everything we talk about in the Agile community, because they're riddled with like scope and roles and responsibilities, and I think it was Dan used the phrase silos of responsibility, which I really liked. And there's the change management, there's documentation within documentation. I saw an RFP recently that had 17 pages of change management. That's not what the changes were, that's how to manage change. So the ideal way to progress is probably just to get started, but that's going to be really difficult with this dynamic. So what usually happens, and please don't take away from this that Toby said you have to do a discovery phase, but usually you'll do a discovery phase. So the really important thing to do here is to make it a short discovery phase. Quite often clients will ask for a 2-3 month discovery phase. I've heard of 6-month discovery phases. Try and make it 2 weeks. Maybe try and make it 3 weeks at a maximum. But once you limit it, there's only so much unneeded documentation you can do in that period. Just by limiting it, you've set an expectation that there won't be that much. And then during that period, do some training. In my current project, we got, some of you will know Alan Kelly, who's here today, who did some Agile training. We got Seb in to teach the team BDD. This is a great kind of almost bizarre phrase, but kind of humility tool where you make sure that everyone's on the same page. You don't assume that the team know all the answers and know about Agile, know how to do BDD. And it also means that you kind of set the expectation with the client that you're not going to be delivering all these predefined requirements. You're going to define them as you go. It's worth saying, I try and encourage a kind of continual phase of discovery. It's not just that 2-week period. You're always trying to discover better ways of working together, maybe doing some more training. And discuss the objectives. The objectives are the most important thing about the entire project. We talked quite a lot about them this morning, so I won't go on about that, but make sure every member of the team understands what the objectives are. Print them out on the wall so that when everybody picks up a piece of work, they can question it. They can ask, why am I being asked to do that? How does that ladder up to meeting this client's objectives? Make sure everyone understands that. Get to know each other. Worked on a project recently where the team had been working together for 4 years with the client, and we went out for drinks after the training, and somebody said to me, that was great, I've never had a pint with the client before. I've never been out for a meal with them. 4 years, how do you work with somebody if you haven't spent some time with them out of the office, maybe, or on a call or whatever it might be, to find out about them. Have they got family? What their hobbies are? Why do they always go home at 4 o'clock? There might be a great reason for that. Why are they always in so early? Whatever it might be. And really, really important, get to know their business. Get everyone to know their business, the entire team. My current project is with one of the country's big house builders. I got the entire team to go to one of the building sites. They've all got their hard hats on and stuff. They got us to walk around a show home, see how thick the shag pile is, or not, as the case may be, and actually go and experience their business, and also get them to meet their customers as well if you can. A really good thing to do is get the team to go to the call center, to sit next to the folks in the call center and listen to what frustrates and delights the customers. And again, don't just do that once. We're about to go on another visit to the call center in the next few weeks. This is kind of 6-9 months into the project. Practice BDD, finally I mentioned it. So do BDD, as I said before, that it's a brilliant way to dispel this idea that we're working through these requirements. As soon as you have your first example mapping session, the client will see that not only that we're not working through those requirements, but they'll see the complexity of the thing we're trying to address. We're not showing them a load of databases and how we connect. We're interrogating their assumptions. We're questioning what they say. And then finally, this is tricky, but try and delay the commercial model as late as possible, because so many Agile projects, I think, fail because the commercial model doesn't embrace Agile values and principles, okay? So it kind of assumes it's a legacy project with scope and with these handoffs and with loads of documentation and stuff. And this is tricky because traditionally, as agencies, we want these long commercial engagements. We want to tie the client into a kind of 18-month contract. But the way that we develop is cyclical. The way we define and explore and discover our requirements is cyclical. And the way we deploy is cyclical. You know, ideally that we deploy as we go along and discover and learn. So why shouldn't our contracts be cyclical? Why shouldn't we have a contract that is not scope-based, but is kind of objective-based, or even resource-based, whatever it might be? Then this feels really risky to agencies, because they say, but the client could walk away after 2 months. But first of all, an 18-month contract doesn't mean the relationship can't fall apart and the client can't fall away, or it can't just become the worst project to work on. It's almost like a comfort blanket having this 18-month project. So I've just seen the time, sorry. So don't do it, basically. Try and have short durations, short project contract durations as well. And if I were a client, one of my primary measures of success would be, how's the code being written? Can it be handed off to another agency quite quickly? How's it being structured? Can we take it in-house quite quickly? With my current client, we have a steering committee meeting every month with their most senior people, and I encourage them to actually say during that meeting, shall we work with Zone for another month? Because if we're delivering less value than the value of this contract, they should be able to walk away. But I'm really confident because we're delivering brilliant stuff and they're seeing our working software every 2 weeks. We're deploying it every 2 weeks. Why would they want to walk away? So, in conclusion, it's a tricky dynamic between client and agency. The commercials must reflect the Agile values and principles. It's really difficult to do, but you absolutely have to do this. Otherwise, accountancy practices lead to the wrong behavior, which is the worst place you want to be in. Agree how to work during that discovery phase and ongoing. Don't agree what you're going to do. Or less so. Talk about how we're going to work together. What are our values? Are we going to adopt Scrum? What are we going to do? And not what does the solution look like. Collaboration is obviously crucial, and do BDD from the outset. That discovery phase, if you start doing your BDD in that discovery phase, at the end of a discovery phase, you've got some working software that meets the user need and hopefully is valuable. That's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over.